Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. This information was relayed to the Utah County Sheriff's Office and scene investigators at Utah Valley University. This information was also conveyed to the FBI. Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images. Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger. Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from the contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits. I know there's been speculation as well as to the writing on those casings, those bullet casings, and I believe we have that as well. And I will share that with you now. So the area north of Campus Drive Road where the suspect crossed over, you saw some of that in the video that we released last night, consists of a grassy area with trees on the edge of the UVU campus. Investigators discovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a dark-colored towel. The rifle was determined to be a Mauser Model 98 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle. The rifle had a scope mounted on top of it. Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices, bulges, capital OWO, what's this, question mark." Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point." Up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow Chow." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." We are indebted to law enforcement across the state who has worked seamlessly together, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and our federal partners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're grateful for everyone who worked together in such a short amount of time to find this person and to bring justice. I want to thank the public who has been so engaged, reviewing videos, helping us with sending in tips, and helping us get to this point. I want to thank the family members of Tyler Robinson who did the right thing in this case and were able to bring him into to law enforcement as well. I especially want to thank the family of Charlie Kirk, Erica, Charlie's parents, his children. I want us to be thinking of them as we bring justice in this case. They will be involved in that justice. We will be working very closely with them as we move through this process as well. This is a very sad day for our country, a terrible day for the state of Utah, but I'm grateful that at this moment we have an opportunity to bring closure to this very dark chapter in our nation's history. With that, I will now turn the microphone over to the Director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Thank you, Governor. This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump, the Vice President, and the entire White House who have been so incredibly supportive with both resources and just personally to the FBI as a team. They had our backs the entire way, and I just want to express my gratitude for giving us the resources we need to operate in this space to bring this sort of justice at this sort of speed. In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie. Governor Cox, our partnership has been absolutely incredible these last few days. Our partnership will endure. Your state and local partners, your sheriffs, your DPS community has been unbelievably impressive in the hardest of times. And a case like this cannot be solved, cannot be brought without partnering with your state and local authorities. The FBI has a certain role to play, and we will play that role, and we will lead out for the federal government. But Governor Cox, we are so grateful for your state partnership that led out on this investigation. A little bit of the timeline. Charlie was shot at 12:23 p.m. on Wednesday. The first FBI agents arrived on scene in 16 minutes with chiefs of police at 12:39 and secured the scene. The FBI immediately launched fixed-wing assets. We utilized these assets to transport personnel, specialty technicians, hostage rescue teams. We also utilized these assets to go back and forth from the East Coast and here in Utah to transport forensic evidence and other evidence that will be analyzed and is being analyzed at our FBI laboratories in Quantico and other laboratories, including the ATF. At my direction, the FBI released the first set of FBI photos of the suspect at 10 a.m. local time on 9/11. Then, shortly thereafter, the FBI reward of $100,000 was released at 10:45 a.m. local. Myself and Deputy Director Bongino arrived on the scene at approximately 5:30 p.m. on 9/11. The governor led a press conference last night at approximately 8 p.m. where at my direction, the FBI released a never-before-seen video of the suspect. We also released new images to the public of the suspect. And just last night, the suspect was taken into custody at 10 p.m. local time. In less than 36 hours, 33 to be precise, thanks to the full weight of the federal government and leading out with the partners here in the state of Utah and Governor Cox, the suspect was apprehended in a historic time period. And I want to highlight what Governor Cox said. This would not have been possible without you, the media, and you, the public. That's why we went so public, so fast, and we're so transparent, and we're committed to that transparency. The crime scene, just a little bit there. It is a large crime scene. State and local authorities, along with federal authorities, processed that crime scene quickly. And I even had the ability to walk through that crime scene and walk through the steps the suspect took to learn more about what was needed and what resources we needed to bear to create a full picture for the FBI and leadership back in Washington. Furthermore, thankfully to state and local partners, forensic evidence has been seized and continues to be garnered. Forensic evidence has already been evaluated at FBI laboratories in Quantico and state and local authorities here. We will continue to process evidence as we see it, as we collect it, and we will continue to deliver it to Governor Cox and his team. Last night, we had a total of approximately 7,000 leads. As of this morning, thanks to your great work, we have over 11,000 leads that were called in to the FBI, and we are running out every single lead that we can. Every one of those leads will be run out. The arrest is a testament to the dedication of good law enforcement being great and partnerships in law enforcement, which I've tried to highlight as my tenure as the director of the FBI. There is no better relationship for law enforcement than the FBI to partner with state and local authorities, and you've seen it here in these last few days. The FBI Salt Lake field office, along with our offices in LA, Phoenix, Denver, San Antonio, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, our headquarters component in Quantico, all participate in the FBI. I want to express my deep gratitude to the employees of the FBI, the men and women, the evidence response team tacticians, the special operators, the agents, the support staff. You have done monumental work in historic time when the public, who had a right to demand such an expeditious solving of an investigation, the FBI answered that call diligently, critically important to our nation, and we delivered. And I'm proud to be their leader, and I'm proud to be the director of the FBI. This is a very much an ongoing investigation, as the governor said, and we will continue to work with state and local authorities to develop the investigation, to provide them the evidence they need for their ongoing prosecutions, and we will be here to answer every call they absolutely have, as long as it takes, for as long as we need to find and apprehend whatever suspects were involved in this crime. Lastly, to my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Thank you, and good morning. I would just like to take a few minutes as the sheriff to express my gratitude for everybody who has played a part in this investigation. As you know, it's been a vast, a complicated, and a very, very fast-paced investigation. You're looking at people standing up here who are running on, if they got an hour's sleep in the last couple of days, they're probably lucky. It has been very taxing. It has been so impressive, speaking on behalf of the local law enforcement, to see the cooperation that we've seen in this type of case. Across the state, sheriffs, chiefs, our state partners have stepped up and have come to the call on anything that we needed. Our county chiefs have been phenomenal. Our Utah County Attorney, Jeff Gray, who's standing up here with us, has been phenomenal in leading us through this investigation. I would like to thank the federal government for their resources, their assets. Our local team here, our FBI team, has been extraordinary in helping us work through this and bring this person to justice. Most of all, I would like to thank the public, and specifically, I would like to thank the public who turned to prayers and who turned to positiveness for us. I would like to thank them on behalf of the law enforcement community, because we needed those prayers. That's what we needed to get through this. We needed your support, and you gave it to us. We needed your patience, and you gave it to us. And I would like to thank you for the Kirk family, because that's what they need, is your support and your prayers, and that will get us through all of this. So thank you, everybody, for everybody that have stepped up. We've had such a phenomenal response to this. Thank you.
2 days ago, my husband, Charlie, went to see the face of his Savior and his God. Charlie always said that when he was gone, he wanted to be remembered for his courage and for his faith. And one of the final conversations that he had on this earth, my husband witnessed for his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. now and for all eternity, he will stand at his Savior's side, wearing the glorious crown of a martyr.
It's absolutely awful to watch that. And Reverend, I was very moved by what you had to say last night about finding the shared humanity and morality amongst all of us. What's your reaction to watching that?
I mean, as much as I disagree with what Charlie Kirk would say, he certainly did not deserve that. And this family deserves all Americans to hold them in prayer. They've lost a loved one, and now nobody should suffer what he suffered, no matter what their views, no matter how much I disagreed with it. We've got to find a moral center again in this country where people do what is correct in terms of dealing with human interaction and not feel that no matter how angry we get or how opposed we are, that we have the right to harm less known take someone's life.
We've seen, episodes of political violence in this country before. You spoke about the 1960s and the beginning of your time as a civil rights leader last night and have over the course of the day today. You even talked about getting stabbed yourself at a protest. How do you believe that how do you rank or look at, understand the violence that's happening today versus what you've seen over your time as a leader in the movement?
When I was a kid and watched Dr. King and others killed one right after another, it gave me a real view of the country as being violent and out of control. And we've had violent incidents when I came of age in the 80s and 90s, but I've not seen the consistency. We must remember there was a school shooting in Colorado the same day Kirk was killed.
That's right.
And it's almost like we're just accepting this, and that's dangerous. None of us should drop our moral outrage at any killing.
Hundreds of emails from Jeffrey Epstein's personal account are shedding new light on his relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. The emails reviewed by Bloomberg contain mentions of Donald Trump and others, including a 2006 exchange where the convicted sex trafficker told Maxwell to, quote, remove Trump after Maxwell asked him to review a list of high-powered people. Other emails detail lavish gifts, some worth tens of thousands of dollars, sent to Epstein's associates. MSNBC has not obtained or verified the emails. Bloomberg says they vetted them through cryptographic and metadata analysis, as well as corroboration with external sources. Joining us now, senior reporter for The Bulwark, Will Sommer, senior writer for Wired and author of the Inner Loop newsletter, Jake LaHutte, and Lisa Rubin, who is back with us. So, Lisa, what can you tell us about this Bloomberg reporting and these emails?
Well, I think the most important takeaway from this, Katie, is this is the first reporting that demonstrates how Ghislaine Maxwell was not telling Todd Blanche the complete truth. Right? She described herself as having a much diminished role around Jeffrey Epstein after 2003. But as Bloomberg reports in one of the most memorable lines of their reporting, the emails that they collected, and there were 18,000 of them, show that Epstein and Maxwell, just through one account owned by Jeffrey Epstein, a Yahoo account, exchanged at least 203 messages during the first 6 months of 2008 at a rate of more than one a day. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein used multiple other email accounts. How do we know that? Because in litigation that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were part of, where they were sued by victims or victims sued other institutions, we've seen those emails. We've also seen some of those emails, for example, through the New York Times reporting about Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with J.P. Morgan. So the very volume of communications between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as the substance, put the lie to her assertion that she was a non-entity in Jeffrey Epstein's world by the period of time that prosecutors have largely focused on.
I want to ask about the gifts, Will, to other big-name people that have come up in these emails. And I'm going to read a little bit more from the Bloomberg piece. The emails include a spreadsheet itemizing nearly 2,000 gifts, luxury items and payments totaling $1.8 million, with notations indicating they were intended for Epstein's friends, business associates, and victims. The spreadsheet, which was created by one of Epstein's accountants, includes a $35,000 watch that was earmarked for a former Bill Clinton aide, a $71,000 purchase at a Lexus dealership for one of Epstein's Epstein's lawyers, and other items, such as lingerie and chocolates, some for teenage girls who later lodged sexual abuse complaints against Epstein and Maxwell. The spreadsheet indicates that Maxwell helped Epstein arrange many of the items. It doesn't specify whether the intended recipients were ever offered or actually accepted the gifts. I can't think of a scenario where, you're gifting people this much money. It's unusual.
It's bizarre. I mean, I think this is obviously a big scoop in terms of this cache of emails. And it's just a reminder of how well connected Jeffrey Epstein was. And as you said, I mean, I think all of the unanswered questions that still surround him and the people he knew and his activities. And I think, again, that gets at why so many people in the public want answers here, why they expected the Trump administration to investigate further, as they promised repeatedly that they would, and then why it's been so jarring that the administration is trying to move on from this so abruptly. I mean, you mentioned, again, we got another reminder here of Trump's relationship with Epstein. I mean, being mentioned in this email by Epstein, although it's not clear in what context. So again, I mean, it's something that raises more questions.
Let me read the part about Donald Trump from the report as well. Trump's name surfaced again around the time Epstein was making an intense back-channel lobbying effort to get federal prosecutors to drop their case against him. It was an email dated August 23, 2007, a month before Epstein signed the non-prosecution agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida that ended the federal component of the Epstein investigation. The emails indicate that Maxwell may have been referring to a team of reporters covering Epstein who she expected would be seeking information from Trump. And the quote from the email from Maxwell to Epstein says, "You have to assume they went to Donald Trump, then Gossman, the Dachshund, WPB, Pashow, etc." Can you help me understand what any of that means, Jake?
That was the really confusing thing about, one, a lot of these emails had the initial incoming deleted and then only the sent email in response. I also do want to give a shout out to Dhruv Mehrotra, who broke the missing minutes story for us at Wired before joining the evil empire at Bloomberg. But the weird thing I've noticed about the fallout from the story and kind of the lack of response from the White House is that, they gave a quippy comment saying this is yet another fake news story. But I think the walls are really starting to close in terms of the actual consequences that we're seeing from this. The the UK's ambassador for us fired over this.
Yep.
And at this point, what else could come? What other troves of documents are out there? Those are huge unanswered questions.
So, Jake, can you give me a little bit more about the significance of what you just said? Losing the ambassador, the UK ambassador to the US, it's significant because he was known as something of a Trump whisperer. Why was he taken out of that position? What relationship did he have with Epstein that made him so controversial over in the UK?
Yeah, I think the new revelations with Mandelson were that he had been speaking with Epstein far longer after he had initially sort of tried to spin his relationship with him before all these. Likewise, the timeline of Ghislaine Maxwell's relationship with Epstein is very complicated by these emails. And the one weird little tidbit I heard from a Trump advisor this must be now 2 months back, was they said there are international considerations for how they're handling the messaging and information on that case. And the way I read that was someone like a Prince Andrew. There are other international figures where the Trump administration is spread across all these fronts, trying to do tariff deals, trying to end wars. And it's not just his reputation in the mix, but also all these relations with our key allies.
Lisa?
I want to say something more about Peter Mandelson because I think it goes back to the birthday book as well. Peter Mandelson is someone who has a submission in that birthday book. He is pictured in his own submission in the birthday book. And Peter Mandelson has a long-term partner, a male partner, but nonetheless is making a reference to the quote-unquote interesting guests at Little Jeff Island. He has a picture of himself with two women whose faces are blocked out. And he's joking around about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was known to sort of flit here and there and everywhere. So you could be staying on the island and Jeffrey Epstein would disappear and you would be left alone with his, quote, interesting guest. That's Peter Mandelson's own words. So Peter Mandelson is sort of indicating in his birthday book submission that even if he didn't know that these women were underage, he was well aware of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual proclivities and at the very least, the fact that he preferred young girls.
Donald Trump's push to expand federal power and troops in the streets continues to draw protests over a creeping autocratic bent. Today, he is saying protesters may be targeting him because they're somehow on the take, and he's threatening to go after people he says would be funding protests.
They are professional agitators. They're professional. I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't serious. They get paid for it. They're professional, from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros, because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people, because this is more than like protest. This is real agitation.
You can see what used to be sort of broadly mused about or hinted on social media by Trump is now just day-to-day statements. He's admitting there something that could get a case thrown out if he really is ordering up a RICO case against a prominent Democratic donor. I mean, you heard the way he said that. There hasn't been any public reporting that Mr. Soros is funding the people that Trump ran into at the D.C. restaurant, and protesting peacefully is an American principle and certainly protected by the First Amendment. And yet Trump is not shy about a desire to punish free speech and to test how far he can get with his power. So he's saying they're going to send troops next to Memphis, part of the ongoing effort to put troops in the streets to affect things. He's done it in the Capitol. And this is not what the National Guard has been typically used for. Indeed, in L.A., we saw a judge say he went too far, although the exact line here is being worked out. And you might say, gosh, why hasn't the line been worked out before? Here's the answer. No other president in either party has sought to habitually deploy National Guard troops to this many cities without any ongoing reason or cooperation from those states' governors, who, of course, run the spectrum and are from both parties. So no one's ever actually tested this. We've had some problems and debates over the National Guard being deployed, but they were usually deployed because there was mass riot protests, nothing like what Trump is seizing as kind of his pretext, and almost always with the governor's cooperation. How does the Guard feel about this? Well, internal documents from this Guard under the Trump administration show some troops and veterans think this is a bad idea. They have shame around this type of mission. They're concerned that they are being used as pawns, leveraging fear that ultimately drives a wedge between the citizens and the military.
The most important thing that we've seen in Washington, D.C., Matt, is the evidence that the American people don't have to live like this.
Chicago should be begging Donald Trump for help to keep Chicago safe, yet they aren't. So we're going to go into a city who wants us there. They are a progressive city, and they don't want the president's help. That's on them. It's horrific that they don't want President Trump's help.
I would love if we did this in every big American city.
Is it horrific that people aren't calling in the feds? Remember, traditional conservatism is you don't bring out soldiers or the federal government to deal with every problem. Since the founding of this country, the Conservative Party, and its name has changed over time, but the Conservative Party and its principles has always been the feds are a last resort. Now, if you have a sprawling multi-day riot, sometimes you've seen it. You bring in the feds, but you don't bring them in to police every street corner. They're not of the community. They don't have the relationships there. They're not answerable to the local community. That's why conservatives have always been skeptical of too much use of federal power. And now that this is moving from what you might call the blue cities, as Trump puts it, to elsewhere, we are hearing some voices. Republican Senator Tillis says it's a problem to send troops to his state. We're also seeing other scenes in Trump's America, a video that has caused a lot of concern as masked federal agents went in surrounding this car, smashed the window, and detained people at gunpoint.
With guns drawn, masked federal agents shatter the driver's side window of a car, grab two men inside, and push them to the pavement. A third person in the orange Chevy Camaro, a woman, can be heard shouting at one of the agents not to touch her and to identify himself. Other witnesses say the two men are lawful permanent residents or green card holders and were hauled away from the scene in handcuffs by agents.
When someone runs up on you like that in the middle of the day for no apparent reason, it actually makes sense that you would ask who they are. Do you even know if you're experiencing a law enforcement operation or a potential kidnapping? And if they are mass and aggressive and won't identify themselves, they're contributing to the problem, even if ultimately we learn that they are acting under the color of federal law. Local reports say the woman was pregnant and an American citizen. So these are big problems for how we live now. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but his crimes have left a long shadow, including the newly revealed so-called birthday book, which was only obtained because members of Congress finally forced a subpoena on his estate. Investigators in New York City were seen Wednesday. They met with lawyers from the estate about the book. Outlets like the New Yorker and the Atlantic have pointed out that even when you put Trump aside, if you care about victims and the law, this is even worse than people might realize. You need to understand it and see how bad it was. And then you add to that how many rich elite men, many in the sort of Wall Street corridor, including Donald Trump, appeared from the book to know exactly what Epstein was up to, or at least that he was up to some level of crime. There's a message with an Epstein acquaintance reminiscing about picking up girls on the beach, telling them with knife in hand to get naked, and then, quote, just joking. Another book page shows what appears to be a very young girl here, was obviously redacted, but the point being what could very well be a minor and a real person, a victim. It's from a section in the book that is titled Children and contains letters and drawings that at least simulate the handwriting of children. This is now the convicted sex crimes, including Maxwell, who's still in prison, although remember, this book, these activities, the Trump administration helped her get to an easier prison. And then you have, within that context, this now infamous letter, which Donald Trump denied, sued over, but now here we have it in public in the book and in the possession of Congress. Senate Republicans, meanwhile, are still blocking an effort by Democrats to get the rest of the files released. And if you see that birthday book, which hides behind jokes and different sort of dances, imagine what else the documents might show. The House also inched closer to a vote on those files after a Democrat won a special election in Virginia by a whopping 50 points. Survivors are demanding transparency.
It's not just that they're ignoring survivors when they're having meetings, when they're discussing, when they're talking with the convicted pedophile sex trafficker.
Who I saw and what I experienced there was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world.
I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen.
It really just made me ill when I went through it. It really just solidified to me what the culture of Epstein and his friends were. And it's right there in black and white in this book.
Will you meet with the Epstein victims? Do you plan to meet with?
I don't know about, nobody suggested that. Certainly, I don't like that whole situation with respect to anybody being abused or hurt, but I haven't even thought about that.
The people who know the most about this are Epstein dead, his co-conspirator in prison, and the victims. Now, through only this pressure, the rest of the country is learning a bit more and perhaps deciding what to do about it.
Senate Republicans invoked the so-called nuclear option, changing the chamber's rules along party lines so they could speed up confirmation of a block of lower-level Trump nominees. This just happened, yes, this week. This change, it lowers the 60-vote threshold for these confirmations to a simple majority, and it undercuts the ability of individual senators to block nominees that they find objectionable. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says the change is necessary to break Democrats' blockade of nominees, but Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Republicans will regret it.
This is a sad, regrettable day for the Senate. And I believe it won't take very long for Republicans to wish they had not pushed the chamber further down this awful road.
Joining us now is Ali Vitale, host of Way Too Early and MSNBC senior Capitol Hill correspondent, and former Democratic Congressman Max Rose of New York. He serves as senior advisor to Vote Bets.
So, Ali, you have the unique and esteemed pleasure of covering Capitol Hill. And
I love it every day.
I know you do. I know you do. And spending time sort of sussing out the background noise around these things. So there are two parts that I want to start with. The first is why the Senate Republicans feel they need to do this. And two, it's a WSSD question. What should Schumer do?
That is the question that we ask ourselves a lot on Capitol Hill.
I'm sure.
We're trying to get into the Democratic mindset. We'll do that second.
Well, the other one is what should the Democrats do? But yeah, well, let's start with
And that's
Schumer.
a larger, more existential question than we have
Exactly.
time for. It is way too late for me after all, but we'll start on the first of the why they would do this, because we've seen changes going nuclear before in Congress, in the Senate. Both parties have been responsible for doing this. In this instance, it allows them to go through these nominees more quickly. We're talking about like undersecretaries, deputies, and they're doing them in large batches now because the president has been very frustrated with the slow pace of the Senate. Surprise, surprise. Welcome back to Washington. But they want to do this now to alleviate some of that pressure. But I think the other thing that's important here to point out is Simone referenced the fact that some people can't make flags or disagree with nominees anymore. The biggest change is that it's the minority party, so in this case, Democrats, who can no longer flag a nominee. Republicans can, and the way that they plan to deal with that is like if one Republican senator comes and says, I don't know about this one undersecretary, they'll kind of figure that out in a back room and then come back and say, okay, we'll vote on the batch or take them out. We'll see. Now, lifetime appointments, lifetime judges are exempted from this, but I think that's an important change. And you know this, the reason that they're reluctant typically to make changes like this, the reason it's news that they would go nuclear is because eventually the shoe comes back on the other foot.
Yes.
And that deals a blow to the bipartisan way that the Senate functions.
And they'll be the first ones screaming, oh, you can't do that after
Correct.
they've
And so
done
what
it.
should Schumer do? I mean, in this instance, he doesn't really have many options.
Right.
Okay, I want you to pick up on that last point because I think this can sound really processy, but we're talking about a Congress that already has absolved itself of a lot of its responsibilities. They're now taking more power away from the minority party. You had Schumer saying that the party was reacting to Trump's historically bad nominees, a trend he predicted would worsen with the GOP's rule change. I know the question I'm about to ask is going to sound flippant, but I don't mean it flippantly. How do these nominees get worse?
Well, I don't necessarily know they can get worse, but I can tell you what breaks my heart about this issue is that the option was still on the table. Senate Democrats should have done this when they had power. I do not care about the Senate as an institution. I care about the Democrats using all of the political power at their disposal. Every single time you see the president or the Republican Senate do something to exert political power, to get something done on their agenda, and we all say, Eureka, this is amazing. I can't believe they're doing it. This is horrible. I strongly believe the Senate Democrats should have done that when they had the opportunity to do so, because the difference between the two parties in the end is the Republicans are using it to advance xenophobic, authoritarian public policies that do no one any better, whereas the Senate Democrats, when they had a chance, their policies would have actually helped more people. That's the only sad thing about this right now.
I love that Congressman Rose said, I don't care about the institution of the Senate. And I say that because I think a lot of, Capitol Hill, D.C. people will say it's the institution of, the Senate believes they're the greatest deliberative body in the history of the world, which, at one point in time, yes. But this defense of institutions versus fighting the fights that need to be fought, I think is a really important dynamic that's creeping up inside the Democratic Party apparatus right now.
It absolutely is. And it's really a divide based off of, I don't want to say age, but almost how long you've been there. Because there was a day in the Senate where it wasn't about which party you're in, it's about the Senate versus everybody else. And you know what? Those days are not coming back. They're just not. What matters at this point is when you have power. When the people say, hey, we're going to give you the majority, do everything in your power to get something done. Because here's what I know. People will vote based off of what you're able to deliver. They will not vote. Try coming back to a forum or a town hall or knock on doors and say, look, I know I didn't address affordability, but I really protected the institution. Good luck with that. Good luck in the next election. Doesn't work.
I think, Ali, the congressman is right. I know he's right about that narrative publicly going forward. So it raises a very interesting question as we turn the corner to the end of this month and the beginning of a new fiscal year. And this is where you hear the angelic harp playing and all of the background sounds about a new budget year for the federal government. And this idea of a shutdown, you've got this concept that's emerging, shut down Democrats, right, who are looking to fight back. You have AP News noting Schumer says he and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries are united in opposing any legislation that doesn't include a key health care provisions and a commitment not to roll them back. He argues that the country is in a different place than it was in March, when he vigorously argued against the shutdown. And he says he believes Republicans and President Trump will be held responsible if they don't negotiate a bipartisan deal. Yeah. You've just said in the Senate, for example, the Democrats have been basically neutered. They don't have the ability to do the thing, to the congressman's point, that they could have done earlier, right, in terms of using the politics of the institution to affect policy changes. How does this play?
They're doing it now.
They're doing it now. So,
on this, they actually do have some leverage, right? And that was the word that I was hearing throughout August from Democratic members that I were talking to. And the feeling was in March, House Democrats felt very hung out to dry by Chuck Schumer, who ultimately, of course, gave the votes that were necessary to avoid a government shutdown. At that point, the question was, well, how do we get out of a shutdown if we get in one? And there was a realization, of course, that there were some in the White House who were perfectly comfortable with the government no longer functioning and could see some policy upside to that. What I think hasn't changed is that dynamic. What happens if you get into a shutdown and how do you get out? But Schumer and Jeffries both are very aware of exactly what the congressman is talking about here, the clamoring from the base. And they finally found the issue that they're willing to fight on. They want to center this around the Medicaid cuts that were put into place in that big, beautiful bill. They know it's going to be the seminal issue of the midterms. They know that health care has been a really salient message for them before. Think about 2018. And they now see not just leverage in this fight, but an opportunity to make it a reminder for the American public, hey, we're giving Republicans yet another chance here, and they're still not saving your Medicaid. That's the thinking on the Democratic side.